Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chatter, a podcast from The Gist. On today's show, we're talking to my friend Luke Belvedere. He goes under the name of LT Belvedere. He's a blues and ragtime sort of style musician. If you saw him on stage, you'd swear you were in the 1930s. We talked all about how difficult it is for musicians to get paid in the modern day and whether technology has helped that at all, about what you're paying for when you're paying a musician to come and perform, and a little bit about Jordan Peterson as well, because he's a big fan. If you like the show, you can subscribe to us on iTunes or on YouTube, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Today's show is sponsored by Unison. Unison are one of the largest trade unions in the United Kingdom, and in Northern Ireland they recently finished a campaign to fight cuts that have been proposed across the Northern Ireland Health Service that would have affected frontline services. So if you're interested in joining Unison, or you want to find out more about them, you'll find the link in the description below. So let's get on with the podcast. So Luke, it's nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I say here, I came to you, but
It's nice to be talking to you, Josh.
yeah. Well, I've wanted to have a musician on for our entire previous 19 episodes, and so here you finally are, a musician.
Loosely.
So why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of how you first picked up a guitar?
Well, I was strumming a few chords for bands since, I don't know, I drummed originally, to start there. I was playing a drums kit for a while for a few bands, and then I wanted to move forward from the back line, get a bit more attention. Started strumming a few chords for bands, and then when I moved over to Scotland for university, and I didn't know anyone, and I realised I was going to have to hold my own if I wanted to involve myself in the music scene that I found out there on the university campus. And so I had to learn songs all on my own, and all I wanted to play at the time was like pre-war blues and to go further than that, ragtime. So that's when I had to pick up the guitar properly. And
So it was only when you were 18?
yeah.
So all the skills you have now, like in terms of like your blues guitar playing, is not something you've had for like decades? It's
been 5 years playing the guitar properly. I mean, I started picking it up when I was 16 because I played the ukulele originally, but that stops being cute when you grow a beard. So I had to move on to the guitar, and so really 18, middle of being 18 as well, so 5 years.
That's kind of late.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. A lot of people who are musically inclined would start a bit younger.
Well, that year was intense though, because I wanted to be playing music so much, and there wasn't a whole lot happening on the campus during the winter, that I just spent most of my time outside of studies just playing the guitar.
Fair. No, that's... I didn't realise it was so late, actually. Having seen you play, I always assumed it was like a lifelong skill you'd had.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment, thank you.
Yeah, man, definitely do. And when you've been... So you started playing gigs and whatnot and jamming and, trying to get a bit of experience. Like, how did you feel then about people offering to, say, pay you in exposure or pay you in experience, and how do you feel now about it?
Well, the whole topic of paying people with exposure, I think it's a sore topic for a lot of people. Anyone in the creative arts particularly will encounter this idea of exposure, or as you say, experience, or I don't know, there's a third one people talk about, contacts, networking.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I've experienced it myself.
well, you can't pay the rent with with exposure. There was that. It was like a little online poster went around Facebook for a while. I'm sure you saw it. It was when you hire a musician, what you think you're paying for.
Yeah.
When you hire a musician, what you're really paying for, and then what you think you're paying for is someone to sit in a bar for 3 hours and play songs.
Yeah.
What you're really paying for is like equipment hire, paying off instruments that were bought, lessons, years of experience, time spent learning songs, transport costs, and so even now, like when I'm being paid for gigs, I'm always happy to be paid for gigs. I have to pinch myself every time someone pays me to play an instrument, but still, I think to an extent, particularly in this city, we're definitely underpaying our musicians, and that sounds like it's easy for me to say as someone that is being paid to be a musician, but you're not paying me enough. But when maybe not me, but when I'm seeing other musicians, particularly, we've got some really good musicians in Belfast, particularly this year. I've noticed there's some really good stuff happening. These people aren't being paid much at all, and most of the time they aren't being paid because what they're doing, what I'm seeing people do is they're putting on their own gigs, they're promoting their own gigs, and they're taking sales at the door, and that's fine. But when it comes to people getting regular work, residencies, they do exist, but there's not enough. And I think that's a real problem.
Why do you think there's not enough residencies, given that we've probably got a little bit of an oversaturation of musicians in Northern Ireland?
I don't know.
Probably across the island of Ireland in general, but...
Well, now maybe someone could disagree with me because it's not really my world. I know a lot of people that are doing them, and they pay okay, but all the advice I'm getting is leave Belfast. Like, go to Dublin, go to Donegal. And honestly, I just did a gig in Donegal, and the payout there, now maybe this is just anecdotal, but the payout there is 1.5, maybe 2 times what they're paying in Belfast because of the oversaturation talking about, and maybe that's the reason why. Like, these places can just exploit that, and like, well, exploit's a heavy word to use, but if you're gonna hire a musician, there's plenty of guys that have just come into the city that will do your 3 hours for 60-70 quid, and that's going to undercut anyone that's trying to make a living off this, who's been here for a while, and they're not going to charge that much more. Maybe people are charging 3 hours 100 quid, but if you're looking at, I understand what the businesses are like, you know. I don't know. So the question was,
why do you think they don't? Do you think it's just like a lack of funds? Do you think it's not appreciating what you're paying a musician for? What do you think it is?
Why the businesses won't pay as much? Well, I don't know.
Do you think it's just because they can?
We're definitely in an awfully sour place here, but
well, no, it's more like a question about like what motivates people to pay the least possible for something. Because no, honestly, like it's not like I'm not being like all down on it. I'm just I'm trying to. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think it's economies. It's economy of these businesses. You want to make money. So if you've got a night on, say you've got a night that revolves around live music, and you've got a Tuesday night, you got 3 hours of country music in there. People are going to come down. Well, you want to make as much money as you can off drinks. So if you can save 30-40 quid on a musician, as long as you get the quality that's it. You get the minimum quality of a musician that you need. You pay them 60 quid. They're new to this, and then as soon as they start asking more money, you move on to the next new guy. And that's fine to work for a while, but if you want to develop an actual healthy scene, you need to keep these people on. Like a good example of that is Rob McCulloch. Like, he's been playing that residency for...
Where's his residency?
Empire every Thursday.
Okay.
And I think he said that he's been playing that same spot every Thursday for 17 years. And the band changes, but there's a few key members, and they've been playing that same spot for 17 years every Thursday. Now, in that time, I'm sure his price has gone up. Well, I know his price has gone up, and well, if anyone listening to this can correct me, I assume. But what a great decision for the Empire to keep him on, because you've been down to that night, like every week, there's the place to fill up. So I think maybe if more of that could happen, if people could maybe invest in these people a little bit more, we'd see a little bit more health in the scene, instead of just getting the guy in that does, and I'm not bashing people that do this, but getting the guy in that does 3 hours of Ed Sheeran and James Blunt covers, you know, getting him in for 60 to 80 quid, and then as soon as he asks for more money, gets a bit more experience or buys better equipment and needs to pay it off, you move on to the next guy, and that does happen. But look at the investment, how it's worked out for the Empire. I'm trying to think of any other ones. There are other ones. Well, the Empire has a few, actually. The Empire has a few. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that if if we want to build a scene and make and have a real healthy musical scene in Belfast, we need to invest in people rather than just viewing it as a resource to be tapped.
So would you say it's more that the focus isn't the live music of whatever night it is in a lot of places? The focus, that it's a feature but not the focus, and that's why there isn't as much invested in having the band that people go for. In that people go to somewhere for a drink, and then the sort of extra incentive is that there's live music. Whereas maybe in the Empire, because you've got a more established name, people go for the live music, and it's great that there's drinks there.
Well, you have to forgive me. I'm coming from a place of complete ignorance in this. This is not the world I'm from. I know people that do it, and that's all I can speak about. It's my opinion of what I've heard.
Oh, well, you're more qualified than most to talk about it.
Well, I don't know. Not in this city, but
you've done you do your fair share of gigs around here.
I'm trying to think. Like, maybe it's that it's a hard balance to get, because to some extent you need to view it as a job because these people are earning a living, but it's not just a straightforward transaction, because there's other complicating elements involved, creativity, and as we were saying before, like there's a lot of investment these people put in, time wise, unpaid time, and I think there's a bit of confusion to go back to the original point of what these people are paying for, what these bars are paying for. A bit of confusion in that, and maybe there's a bit of confusion into how much it's worth to have a live musician over just recorded music, or even a DJ. Like, again, not bashing DJs, they have their scene and they have their place, but it's not just the same as they're not equivalencies. I think there's a bit of confusion as to how much more it's worth to have a live band in. Like, for example, look at, like, you go into Kelly's and there's a trad session on, and you can see the musicians, you can sit down beside them, and you can watch them interact with each other. There's a whole other depth of entertainment that you experience rather than just hearing traditional music over the speakers. And I think
you're not just watching. It's why people pay money to go to see a live concert. You're not just there to hear the songs.
And that's what I was saying before. People are putting on nights. That's one thing. That's people are paying in to go and see a particular type of music or a particular band. But like, look how much free music there is in Belfast. That's where the problem arises, because it's a direct transaction between the bar or club and the musician. It's not between the patrons and the musician. I think that's where the problem arises. So if you're hiring someone in to provide, and it really is, you're providing a service rather than just music. You're providing a service for entertainment. I think it needs to be a bit more thoughtful. It needs to be a bit more thought through, because it is such a different thing.
So maybe have some places with a cover charge for live music.
I'd rather not see that. I think the issue needs to come into remember coming into resolution. How is it solved? I think it's about understanding, and it's I'm using the word confusion before. It's people need to do a bit of thought about what they're paying for, I think. And do you know what? I'm ignorant to the bar stance on it as well, really. Like, maybe they can't pay people more. Some of these places definitely can't, but some of these places definitely can.
Yeah.
And in those cases, it's because they're making a lot of money off a particular environment, and that environment is partly provided by the musicians that they've hired in. For the example I gave before, like traditional music, like that's so important to a lot of our bars here. They wouldn't be getting the same patronage they are if they didn't have traditional music on. For example, 5 Points. And I don't know much about 5 Points and their policies, so I can't talk about them. But they seem to do quite well. They seem to be a good gig to get. I'm not playing myself. I'm not a traditional player, but like that whole bar is built around there being live music every night of the week. It seems to me.
Well, that's it. Working as a waiter in Belfast, you've no idea how many times I have been and sort of still do get asked when people are, especially at the weekend, finish like, oh, where can we go see some live music?
Right.
And, you know, where would have live music on? And
Where do you send them?
Sunflower sometimes.
Right.
People used to suggest Fibber McGee's.
I've never been to Fibber McGee's.
You've never been?
I've never been to Fibber McGee's.
That's funny. Yeah, but that then when I was in Flame, that was literally just around the corner, so that was the attraction there.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, the Dirty Onion has a lot of live music on these days.
Yeah. True.
So it depends what sort of thing people are looking for, to be honest. Like, obviously, the Sunflower and the Dirty Onion are...
The Dirty Onion, for example, it's another bar that really benefits from, you know, an environment they can create by hiring musicians.
I feel like their musicians are, like, fairly well paid, at least, but I haven't played there, so I can't comment.
You know, as I say, this residency scene is not my scene that I'm familiar with. I'm trying to make my way into the nights I was talking about where people are paying in. I'm supporting bands. That's what I'm doing these days. And it works just fine for me.
Well, if you can get in, then great.
Yeah,
that's the real step. But I guess I know that's not really changed for musicians in that there's always a lot of unpaid time for and not just musicians, anyone creative.
True. In
that you can't pay someone to accept what's not good enough yet.
Course,
you have the time has to be put in, and there's going to be unpaid time for anything. Like, I'm not exactly getting paid right now.
Yeah, of course. Am I not getting paid?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll write you a check.
I guess it's the same for anyone doing a degree as well. I mean, if you're aiming towards a particular business, there's going to be time put into developing your craft and in the case of like most artists, you're developing a product as well. There's going to be that time, and maybe in that online poster I was talking about, maybe it's not fair to assume that people should be back paying for experience gained. Maybe it is. I mean,
I do appreciate the argument about the time spent practicing for said gig, because like it doesn't matter how many times you've played a gig, like unless you're doing it every night of the week, you're going to need to fine-tune things, you're going to want to run over things, you're going to want to practice new songs for your set.
But that's the slight difference between paying for experience and paying for time spent practicing. I mean, you could spend 2,000 hours practicing a song and it could still sound horrible. You know, or you could spend 200 hours with
yeah, I can attest to that.
You know what I'm saying? You're paying for a skill level rather than directly paying for time put in.
Well, I guess that it kind of goes to the have you ever heard this? I saw this video, it did the rounds on Facebook, one of those like parables that you see the video of or whatever on Facebook occasionally. Yeah. And the story was there was this really, really old steam engine and it broke down and they had to get this shipment on the train from, I don't know, wherever they were, say like London to Newcastle. And they looked at it and they could not figure out what was going wrong with it. So they called in a couple of engineers, no idea. No one who worked there could tell them. And then they called up this old engineer who used to work for the company. And he'd worked there for like 60 years, like got loads of experience working with these steam engines. And they called him in and they went, look, we'll pay you anything you want, just as long as it takes. We just need to get this steam engine working again as soon as possible. He was like, okay. So walked around a little bit, took a little look, got his hammer out and just knocked the bottom of it 2 times, and lo and behold, the thing sprung into life. And he handed them the invoice for £10,000, and they were like, what? All you did was hit the hammer twice? And he went, no. That was £2 for hitting the hammer, 9,998 for knowing where to hit.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I don't claim to even understand the level of experience that I'm still a child when it comes to playing music. You know, I'm really, really just starting to do this, and I am entirely. I cover myself. I'm entirely speaking from a place of ignorance, and yeah, I don't even understand that level, and so I can't claim to be able to speak about it. But maybe there is value in in Rob McCulloch's case, say, paying for that experience.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So, I mean, how do you measure that though? That's the problem. So like,
well, man, it's artistic. You can't put a number on creativity.
Well, but does it have to be creative? This is the question.
True.
So say, what's the difference between someone who's been playing to keep on the music to play music for 10 years, but they only play cover sets, or someone else
who's been playing cover set?
It's maybe it's the same cover set. Maybe it's been 30 years and they're still only doing like Joni Mitchell and Jim Croce songs, you know, and but they've been doing it for 10 years and they're really good at that set. In comparison to someone who's been writing songs for 10 years and they've got 10 years worth of material, 30 years worth of material, how do you compare that? Who's worth more?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah. It really is. It's a really tough thing to try and put a metric on, because and people talk about, right, so say you get £60 for your 3 hours, right?
Right.
You could look at that as £20 an hour, and that's the same as when people look at, say, teacher salaries and they go, well, they get a lot of money for the amount of hours spent teaching. That doesn't take into account, you know, like lesson plans, administration, like just marking in general, like the hours people must spend reading those like half-baked 14-year-olds essays.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
that you're a soldier if you manage to get through 30 of those, like in my mind, because I've looked at some of the stuff I used to write, and I was like, how did this not melt your head? How did you understand what I was blabbering on about? So and then obviously then musicians, it's not just paying for that time spent playing, and the question of how you factor all of those things into the invoice you put at the end is a difficult question.
Well, I think it's actually, it could be an unhealthy way to look at it if you want it to sustain as a craft, because to go back to what I was saying about the difference between the creative music, well, maybe not the creative music, maybe they're both creative, but the original music versus this cover set. The problem that I see arising if you're viewing the whole thing as a direct transaction of how many hours put into how much you're being paid, the guy writing the songs might, for every song he puts forward into his set, it may have taken a week, 2 weeks, 3 months work for that song. Whereas, well, I know I'm not particularly experienced in it, but I could churn out 5 or 6 decent covers, decent as in like a corner of a bar worthy, in a day.
Well, yeah.
So if it's a direct transaction,
but that's still a day's work.
It's still a day's work, but the product is 6 times more than, well, it's more than 6 times more. If he's if he's really good, he's putting a song out a day.
Okay.
You know, so I'm learning 6 more than him, and I've got 6 times more material. So essentially, I'm earning more. You know, so if you're viewing it as a direct transaction, like any other job, as time in, money out, well then surely everyone would be drawn to the idea of just doing cover sets, and we completely kill off any original music. Now that doesn't happen, and because there are other reasons, but I see the draw, because I'm trying to write original music, and I definitely see the draw of the cover set, and a lot of people do both. They do the cover set to fund the original work. In fact, most people do both, and I guess that's probably where I'm going.
It's also fun to play other people's songs.
Oh, it's lovely to play other people's songs, and I guess there's different types of that too. There's other people's songs that you do your own version of, but I think to look at it as if it's as music as one big thing, and it to be a transaction of time in, money out, you could really kill it for yourself. And maybe that's something I'm going to encounter over the next year or so of trying to do this to make money. Like, how much of my time am I willing to give into creative pursuits, and how much of my time do I have to? Am I bound to give into just creating a saleable product? You know. Well,
I guess there's that, and then there's the idea that a unique and original product presented and performed well will be a saleable and monetizable, if that's a word, product.
Maybe in the boardroom, but like I know plenty of really, really good musicians that are releasing albums, and it's not going anywhere. So there's an element of luck, there's an element of sales, there's an element of showmanship that really, like, if you look at it purely creatively, isn't necessary. But if people want to make a living out of it, like any other art, I guess, those things are integral to being successful. Luck being a major factor.
Oh yeah, like there's someone pointed this out the other day on something I was listening to. So if you take the grand scale of all the things, right, we'll just say music for this, right? The grand scale of all the music being created this year, okay? The ones that are going to get the most airplay and the most listening time is the tiniest fraction of all the music being created, and yet they're making up the majority of what's being listened to. So that it's almost impossible to suggest that there is not luck in that hierarchy.
There's so many factors though, like to just.
Oh yeah, like, you have to be willing to work at it. You have to be talented.
The thing about contacts as well, like if you've had a successful song before, you're many times more likely to have another successful song. But one thing is, if to look at it personally, you've got an idea of how a successful song is written. Well, and you've got reference for this worked last time, and then you've also got the contacts. Luck's involved, as you say, hard work's involved. Taste is involved, you know, like the unfortunate.
Oh yeah, having your moment.
The unfortunate truth is, someone writing Vogue music at the minute, I guess, like this. If you're writing songs, I guess it's in the singer songwriter format. You're definitely more likely to be successful than someone playing black metal.
Oh yeah.
Well, maybe not more successful, but more successful in the mainstream. So there's tastes involved.
You've got a better chance of reaching a larger audience.
So if someone wants to be a professional musician, should they just drop the black metal? I don't mean to victimize black metal. Should they drop the niche? Should they move into the mainstream? Is that the way of things? Again, the same as should we be drawn to the cover set? It depends how you view it, I guess. But it's another element involved. What kind of music are you making? What kind of music do you like to make? And that contributes to whether or not it'll sell.
Well, arguably, with the advent of the internet, obviously, that's the big one.
Yeah.
But then things like...
It's going to be big.
It is. I'm just waiting. I'm going to buy those stocks next week. I still haven't got that Bitcoin I've been meaning to buy yet. And then I don't think it's the right time now. It's gone through the roof.
Well, I've got some, but I don't know how to sell it.
Just hang on to it, man.
Yeah.
I'm interested in it, to be honest, because of I'm just interested watching. I was thinking about this the other day, in that, you know, my economics isn't that up to scratch, but in that, so in Germany, when they had their hyperinflation in the 30s, right, the Reichsmark or whatever it was, the new currency came in. Okay.
Yeah,
right. The Reichsmark, yeah. Okay, and replaced
the Rentenmark.
The Rentenmark, that's it, yeah. And it was like something like trillions or billions of Rentenmarks to a Reichsmark. And or then sort of more recently, say in Austria and Germany, they had shillings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the euro came in. And every time these sorts of changes, that I can tell anyway, in my sort of limited scope of it, every time these changes occur within currencies where a new currency emerges and displaces it, the new currency is always valued less per single iteration of it than the previous currency.
Right.
Sort of in general.
Why is that?
I think it's just because inflation, it makes it like, if you just kept it going, eventually you'd have it.
So that's assuming inflation?
Yeah.
Right.
But there hasn't been any period of modern history really where there's been negative inflation, apart from isolated cases because of certain economic conditions. So
I've got a $100 trillion Zimbabwean note upstairs. I'll show you afterwards.
Oh man, yeah, I've got 1 million Turkish lira at home.
Wow,
it's like
you're a millionaire.
Yeah, well, when it first came out, you're a trillionaire technically.
Well, multi-trillionaire actually.
Multi-trillionaire. So when it came out, it was worth like 38p. But I'm interested to see where Bitcoin goes in where it falls. Say in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, where that like wheelhouse is of value of it, and whether it becomes a currency in itself that gets used like solely. People are talking about the way it could be the digital equivalent of cash because it's anonymous. It's easy to use, quick to transfer. Along those sorts of lines, it keeps that anonymity factor that cash has.
Right. Yeah.
But obviously, there's a little bit more sort of trail and trace to it because of just the nature of the blockchain. But I'm really interested to see where that leads us and where the currency finally settles as a value at, and whether that comes to replace more traditional but like the currencies we have around at the minute and we see as the big, like the euro, the dollar, the pound for now.
Well, I'm just like the saying before, the only reason I don't claim to know anything about its movements or where it's going, but I just wanted to be involved because it's so mad to me. I learned most of what I know about it from my brother, and I'm sure you've talked to him about it, but he bought some and I didn't want to be left out. So I went and bought some too, and he seems to know what's going on. Do you want to?
Oh no, he definitely knows what's going on.
Yeah. The worry is, well, his worry is, and sorry, Jamie, if I'm misquoting you, but he was talking before.
We can have him on in another episode to refute you.
You get him on. He was talking about how likely it is, and how it's already happening that conventional investors are now getting involved in Bitcoin, and that's nothing new. I mean, it's come conventional investors. I mean, conventional investors is in your classic Wall Street boys. They were getting involved at the beginning, but now it's becoming pretty popular. People are getting in, and was it him who was saying? I'll not say it was him because I might be misquoting him. Someone told me that the more of these guys and the more money that's put in, the more stable it becomes. So you're not going to get the mad skyrocketing that was happening at the beginning.
But one Bitcoin's worth what, like $5,000, $4,000?
At the minute, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's closer to $3,000.
Okay, but that's still thousands of times.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't. Most people won't own a full Bitcoin. You own. I think it's a 1,000,000th, 100,000th, a bit.
You got a bit.
Huh?
You get a bit.
Get a bit, yeah. But yeah, I think it sort of hovers. When I looked at it last, it was hovering between 2,998 and 3,020 or something. It sort of sits around there and didn't really move much. And I'm trying not to keep an eye on it because I got a trigger finger and I'll just end up selling it. So I'm trying not to watch it. Jimmy just says, leave it. Just ride it out.
Yeah, he said that. He said he was going to do that to me.
Yeah, me and him are going to ride it the whole way up into the millions.
I don't buy that.
Yeah.
People are too impulsive. This is why there's no right. You looked at someone who'd maybe bought $100 worth of it in like 2012 or something, would be like worth billions now. But that person doesn't exist because as soon as you've made 1,000% profit, you are like, I am gonna cash the fuck out right now while I have 1,000 times. Like,
well, did you see that there's a classic one that happened on Reddit, the post, and the guy was talking about that he'd bought $100 of Bitcoin back when it first came out, just because he's a software engineer and he was interested in how it was working. He was online, completely forgotten. He went into the Bitcoin forums on Reddit, was talking about, I bought such and such back in such and such a date, and the first or second comment was, dude, go and check the stocks. And his comment was, holy shit, I've just made 100 million or something like this. Maybe it wasn't 100 million, but it was closer to 80 million just there and then. Like he'd forgotten about this coin purse he had on his computer.
But like that's the only way in which that could happen, because people are too impulsive. Like once like say you put 100 quid into something, right, and all of a sudden it's worth 10 grand. Are you honestly telling me you have the restraint to be like, no, I'm not going to take the 10 grand in case it goes through the floor? There's no way. Because, okay, say you do that and then it goes up again, and you're like, oh no, it's worth 12, 15 grand. Right, no, that's definitely the highest it's going to go. At some point, you're going to make that decision.
Well, man, I don't claim to be any close to that, but I made about 20 quid, and I'm thinking about selling it. Like,
you see, this is what I mean. And
I'm looking at him going, here, that's a couple of pints of Guinness.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Like, that's a couple of pints of Guinness and a chicken and chips. Like.
Exactly, man. Like people are too impulsive for it. But talking about technology, how, and sort of bringing us back to we were talking about getting paid as a musician. How do you think the internet, as we started the conversation, that new thing, is it making it easier to get paid as a musician?
I will again cover myself by saying I'm coming from a place of almost complete ignorance. I think for some people it is. I think for some people it was. It's definitely good for self-promotion. Like, no one can argue with that. I mean, how many times you find out about a gig on Facebook? I mean, I probably find out 90% of the gigs I go to on Facebook, events put up, particularly local gigs, and that's invaluable. It's so much more. You have so much more reach that way than you would have done a few years ago with posters and flyers. And I'm beginning. I use it myself, and I actually only use my personal Facebook lately. I've got a Luke Belvedere Music Facebook, but I don't use it. I really should. But I do see a lot of people using it really, really well. Putting videos up, putting promotion stuff up, lots of photographs, lots of content, and I think that's excellent. The other topic that we were talking about before we started recording was YouTube, and a lot of people were I at the beginning of me playing music when I was 18, I was just trying to learn to play songs. I was putting videos up on YouTube, and this is what people talk about as the YouTube glory days before this shitstorm has just occurred with all the ad revenue. But
and you did demonetization.
Well, back then, this is 5 years ago. This isn't that long ago, and
I know, back in that
back in the day,
back in that long dreamy period of 2012.
You really didn't need to be getting that many views to be offered ad revenue.
Is it 10,000 subscribers or something you need now?
I don't know what it is now, but it felt like I almost immediately got offered ad revenue. I turned it down because I thought, like, I didn't want to get involved in it because it was only going to be like a few quid, and I thought it wasn't worth it to pull out my videos with ad revenue. But like, I think I was only getting like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Someone will comment saying no, it needs to be this number, but I was only getting like 5,000 views on a video within a couple of weeks. There's not that many.
Well, that's not like a horrendous number. That's pretty good.
Well, it was easy. It was easy stuff because I was playing straight blues and I was putting it on like blues forums, and so it's like no one was coming looking for me. It was just guys looking at videos on Reddit. I don't claim to have drawn anyone in, but times have changed. It seems like YouTube are demonetizing videos, and ad companies are actively rejecting videos that they don't feel are getting enough views, and I think that's hurting a lot of people that put a lot of their time in, particularly like, well, I don't know a lot about it with vloggers, but I see people like, who am I thinking of? Josh. I can't remember his name, but there's a few guys that have made their music careers almost entirely on YouTube, and they put everything out through YouTube, and they sell albums through other means, but their main revenue was through YouTube, and they're not making that money anymore. So what we're talking about, internet for musicians, great for promotion, used to be great for revenue, not so good anymore.
What about Patreon?
So I don't know much about Patreon. I know a couple of guys using it, and they tend to use it in a very basic way. It's just it's that income and access, so that they I don't want to name anyone, but there was a few guys using it to fund an album, to record an album, and they had put out a demo, which I thought this was a great idea. They put out a poorly recorded demo, well, not poorly recorded, basically recorded demo, and they said, we want to record these songs properly with a band, but we need to pay musicians. Here's how much it'll cost. And people did fund it, and funded it because, well, you're essentially you're buying the album, because in this case you fund us, I think it was £15, you get the album, so you're buying the album and then offering a little bit more money. And I don't know, £15 for an album, it's a bit expensive, but it's not that bad
if you like the band.
Yeah, but for a first album to be funded that way, I think it's great. I thought it was a great project. Now obviously they had a draw to begin with. This wasn't their first venture into professional music, but that's my only real experience close to me of Patreon. I thought it was incredibly well used.
Yeah, a lot of creators are using it on YouTube now especially because of demonetization. So the reason it came about is because people on YouTube couldn't make the same amount of revenue as they did initially when the monetization came in, because of the way that it's exploded, essentially, YouTube. It's just crazy how huge it's become.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of people just watching videos and uploading things, the ad revenue just diminished as the views went up, and therefore people needed a way to get paid regularly from the audience that they'd cultivated. So we're looking into doing this once we get to a certain stage, and just getting people to just be like, look, £1 a month.
Yeah.
Just you enjoy what we put out.
To use it as more or less a subscription service.
Yeah, essentially. And they've paid out I think close to $1 billion.
Patreon have?
Yeah.
Wow.
To people, yeah, it's really massive. And they're really touting it as the future of creators, because anyone can go online, right, and cultivate. Say they get 1,000 dedicated people giving £1 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's £1,000 a month, and for anyone who's working, doing creative work, whether it's being a musician or running a podcast or doing anything like that, if you're running a YouTube channel, it's a really fantastic way of having a secure income, and you can go, right, I can just give this my all now.
Yeah. Well, I know there's one channel, it's a real nerdy channel, but Essential Craftsman. You ever watch that?
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking for is $2 one time, a one-time payment to become he's essentially calling it part of his club. Pay $2 in, and you get all this other content, and he's getting enough people. This constant stream. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it seems like he's getting enough people to fund the channel to an extent. So my limited experience of Patreon, I've been very impressed. So. Yeah, I mean, if YouTube is going to kick the bucket, as it were, and not kick the bucket, but not provide people with the living it was, Patreon seems like a great alternative.
I have a theory that YouTube might be, I don't know,
out of here.
Not out of here. It's too huge for that. But I really think that people are going to start jumping ship as soon as a service appears that's going to pay you more for your views.
Well, of course, it's capitalism.
Yeah. But whether the YouTube market will completely disappear at that point, whether people will be happy enough to put their stuff on the platform for the exposure to that huge audience they've garnered, maybe that's the way they want to go with it. But I don't know. I feel like YouTube are playing with fire, essentially, in trying to demonetize content that's, I think, well, it started years ago, but controversial content. And a lot of the time it's just, you hear stories and see people who are running YouTube channels are just entirely uncontroversial, or not entirely uncontroversial, but entirely fact based, and just.
But controversial it's an easy one to move around, isn't it? What does that really mean? I know that guy that puts the YouTube videos out of him eating fast food. He's a fast food reviewer. Have you come across him? He's got his hair slicked back. I can't remember his name. It'll come to me. He's got slick back hair and he always wears a suit. He's the least controversial person on YouTube, but he mentioned something political in one of his last videos, and they demonetized his last 6 videos. It's as I'm saying, it's an easy one to redefine to suit your needs, and if your needs are to save money, you can demonetize anyone's video. I think the real culprit's the algorithms they've got.
But I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm being naive about this, but I feel like because they're demonetizing these videos, they're not putting ads on them. So they're losing ad revenue on channels that, right, okay, so was it Jordan Peterson got banned for a little while, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's getting millions of views on his lectures.
Yeah.
Like, surely they're missing out on that advertising revenue.
Well, there's a few of us, the guys I know, we're about to start a little YouTube channel, and I remember a few years ago there was people doing exactly the same thing. We were talking 4 or 5 years ago, and I was in contact with them. They were talking about YouTube channels, and the buzz was, let's start a YouTube channel. If we get over 5,000 to 10,000 views, say, we'll start making money. No one's talking like that anymore. We're starting this YouTube channel, and there's no one's even mentioned money, you know, because it's just not a topic of conversation anymore. There's no chance. We're starting a YouTube channel from scratch now, and yeah, we're doing it to get the music out in a way that we like, and it's just not even.
There's a lot of scope to get outside sponsors to sponsor videos.
I see a lot more of that. Yeah. I mean, we're not even talking about that. It's.
But like that's something you can look at down the line.
Yeah. Well,
like once, say you had 10,000 subscribers.
Well, I just think it's interesting that the conversation has shifted, and I've noticed the shift because I've done this twice with the YouTube stuff. That the first time I did it was the talk was, yo, see how many views you can get, see how many subscribers you can get, and you might make a bit of money. I haven't heard any of that. We've met up a few times to talk about this, and just hasn't been a topic of conversation, and I think that's interesting.
It has been an interesting shift. I don't understand the business model for YouTube, honestly, in it, and like I said, because I feel like that's them essentially saying, no, you can't advertise here. Surely it should be up to the advertisers. But do you think that's a form of control over the content that they want?
I don't know. Who's to blame though? Because I think a lot of it's algorithms.
Yeah, but someone has to write those algorithms.
Yeah.
And someone could easily go, no, we don't want this good content that's got millions of views demonetized. But it is being demonetized. I'm curious to see where it goes for YouTube, because I feel like I said, they really are playing with fire. I'm really not sure what's going to happen. But I mentioned Jordan Peterson there. I know you're a big fan.
Oh yeah, I don't know, a big fan. I am a fan of Jordan Peterson. I love his lectures.
What is it that like drew you in? Like what really appeals to you about him?
Well, I think a lot of people got drawn into Jordan Peterson's lectures when he after he was well, it's been reversed now, but he was originally sacked from Toronto University, and people find the way he talked about that refreshing, because there is this wave of I need to be careful how I say this. There's a wave of a new type of approach to political conversation, and to an extent how people behave and communicate on university campuses, particularly in America and Canada. And
we don't have as much of it here.
Well, I was talking to a university lecturer yesterday, and I'll not say what topic and I'll not say who, but they have really experienced it, and only in the last 6 months.
When you say experience, what do you mean? What did they experience?
They were saying, well, I'll go back to what I was saying about Jordan Peterson, but this person was saying that their issue hasn't been the same as, say, Jordan Peterson's with it being university students calling for their demotion or even their sacking. Like, they were saying that they experienced it within the staff. Everyone's terrified, and they're terrified of conflict, because conflict gets blown out of proportion to such an extent now in universities that it's just dangerous. It's dangerous for your career. It's dangerous for any classes you might be trying to run. Like, say the topic of the class that you're going to run is a controversial one. You're not likely to get funding for it anymore. And my opinion, and this person's opinion, and it's not everyone's opinion, but it is that you go to university to be challenged, because that is such an integral part in developing yourself and developing your discipline, to challenge each other. And if we aren't doing that, with the key phrase being a safe space, if ever was a safe space, where does the debate happen? And this is their worry, and they're seeing it in staff members, and they're saying things like, "Oh, you can't say that," or in this case, part of the course that they were running was to get the class to elicit an emotional response, because this course has a sociology element, and it tends to revolve around conflict. Surely an important thing is to experience conflict and create conflict in the classroom. Not allowed to anymore. Might upset someone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in Jordan Peterson's case, it's a slightly different shift in that it wasn't really the faculty. The faculty were controlled by the students, but it wasn't the faculty where this mentality originated. It was within the students. And I think a lot of people are fascinated by Jordan Peterson after that. I can't claim to be involved in that. I've enjoyed his lectures, and I'm fascinated by how his mind works and how it seems to work and how he converses. But I'm not sure I fully understand what's gone on with him in Toronto University, and to a larger extent the university community or the university culture in America and Canada.
Yeah, it's something I'm really only starting to get my head around. The sort of experience that Jordan Peterson's had and Brett Weinstein that we had on the show.
I listened to the Brett Weinstein show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. He was fantastic. Like, I didn't want to speak too much about it on the podcast because I felt, he'd spoken about it enough. But just the idea that these clearly incredibly intelligent, I honestly wouldn't describe them as anything other than brilliant.
I think they both are.
And neither of them are trying to be offensive. They're not trying to provoke. They're not saying anything that's outlandish once you look at it, and yet they've been seized upon by people as... And I think that's the most worrying part for me.
Yeah.
Is that people who are genuinely brilliant and genuinely just so well read and well thought out, and everything they say is really well reasoned. You might not always agree with it, but I do worry about the sort of assault on free speech. Is
that what you consider it to be? I guess
in a way, yeah. I really do, because Jordan Peterson isn't transphobic, but he gets labelled as one. He's not racist, he gets labelled as one. He's not misogynistic, he gets labelled as one. And all of these are because of the way he's talking about things. And again, the way he's talking about things isn't particularly crazy or outlandish. Like, okay, so the misogynistic thing was that he said, why do people always focus on the oppressive father in society and in stories, when even in the Bible that's meant to be super patriarchal, and I'd say you could probably argue that it is in a lot of ways, but there's like the patriotic father and there's the wise old king. So there's two elements to it,
right?
And he was essentially pointing this out, and was labelled a misogynist over that.
That's context though, because I can understand if another person was saying that, you could see it in a whole lot of different ways. But because of the subjects he teaches and is so well read in, you have to view it in that context. He's just exploring an idea.
Oh no, he's 100% exploring an idea, but it's something that's not unique to either of their experiences. Something I've seen explained time and time again is that both Jordan Peterson and Brett Weinstein both tried to confront the people who were protesting at their lectures or trying to stop them teach, and they tried to engage with them.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't interested.
Well,
they were there to protest. They weren't there to listen.
Dialogue doesn't exist when someone believes they have the ultimate right, and that's what we're seeing. And that's my worry, is that there are these topics now that can't even be discussed. So, as you say, could really very easily see that as limiting free speech. And for the example I was giving there, it's directly inhibiting the whole function of a university, in that this course I'm talking about that revolves, well, part of the class revolves around conflict and understanding conflict. If you can't explore conflict, then people can't learn about it. And in fact, that's cyclical, because this is conflict, and if you've got no one studying conflict, no one understanding conflict, well, we're just going to go down, and so we're not allowed to do that anymore. This is going to get worse and worse.
So because we're not allowed to deal with conflict, then we don't know how to deal with conflict.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a very specific case of what I think is like a really big problem.
Okay.
But I think it's happening in a lot of universities. People are being held back because you can't hurt anyone's feelings. Like in this case, the fact that Brett Weinstein was called to resign.
I can't believe that. Like, what? Because, like, speaking to him, like, you can just tell he's incredibly charismatic.
No, I'm not saying he did, but for argument's sake, say he had said something inflammatory intentionally. Say he had said something that was completely out of order. Well, I think in a university situation,
if he can back that up.
Well, even if he can't back it up, we're allowed to say things that are inflammatory. He shouldn't be called to resign over it, unless he holds an incredibly damaging belief or is calling for hate speech or hate crime. I don't really see how someone should be called to resign.
Okay, well, I would say that as a lecturer and as someone who's being paid to educate, you have an academic responsibility to present everything as factually as you can, to the best of your ability. And as a lecturer, that's got to be, like, you've got to be pretty well read on whatever you're going to be teaching. So, like, as long as he's staying within the bounds of backing up everything he's saying, considering his points, having supporting evidence for his arguments, I don't like the dismissal of arguments.
Well, I actually don't claim to understand either side, though, and I think that's my issue. I mean, the combat us is two white guys sitting talking about this, like
two white cis males.
Oh well, don't want to delve too deeply into it, but the idea of privilege theory does exist, and you need to be careful, and particularly these days, you need to be careful around who you talk to and what you talk about, because, well, to give grace to the idea, you can do damage to people, and you can talk about topics that are harmful to people, but there is a limit to that. So, like, at what point do we stop teaching about the Nazis? Because that's going to hurt some feelings. And at what point? At what point do we stop talking about other political genocides? At what point do we stop teaching about? I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I think there is foundation to the other side of the argument, and maybe I'm a little more sympathetic towards that than you might be. I don't want to assume, but I'm slightly more sympathetic to the opposite side. But these two cases we're looking at, or we're talking about here with Jordan Peterson and Weinstein, these are the extreme cases, and they're easy for us to sit here and dissect. But at some point, you need to give grace to the other side of the argument, because there are so many people feeling the way they're feeling. There must be something to it. Oh yeah, like just to sort of point out, like, I totally understand most of the grievances that are being espoused by people who are protesting and who are combating things. I just feel that I don't know what it is, but they've got their target all wrong. Like, because I totally agree that, because I think safe spaces are a great idea,
in that they allow people,
they have their place.
Yeah, they allow people to talk about something that might be really uncomfortable for them in a way that they know they can just get it out and just really talk about things, and they know they're in a safe environment. Like some people need that sometimes. They need to know that it's the same as, you can talk about things amongst friends, because that your friends might maybe criticize you for it. They might point out things that you don't want to hear, but they're not there to be hostile to you, and they're not. So they can be really helpful, especially when in a generation and a society where we're experiencing so much that people just have never experienced before ever.
Yeah.
It's necessary to have spaces where people can dissect themselves and the things that they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis without the fear of challenge. That said, I don't believe you have the right to a public space being a safe space. There's places for them, but once you're out in the world, you've got to kind of accept that there's 7 billion other people and not one person out there thinks the way you do.
Yeah. My worry is, like you're saying about public spaces, and there are things that aren't acceptable in public spaces, like, for example, hate speech or
but that's to me, I really I just like dissect hate speech. Hate speech is, like, in my mind, just not acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like, say what you want as long as you're not being horrendously insulting to someone's past, family or history, religion, whatever you like. You can criticize bad ideas, but that doesn't.
That's the question. Can you?
Yeah, that's where the blur, and that's where the trouble comes from.
I think what I'm really worried about, and I guess a lot of people are worried about this, is the weaponization of some of these words. Like, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people getting called Nazi, and
I don't even think it weaponizes it. I think it does the opposite. I think it dulls the meaning to the point where you say that's fascist. Like okay, so people are really concerned about Trump talking about censoring the media. Mm-hmm. No one can say that's kind of fascist.
But I
without being like, oh, you're just calling him a Nazi, because of the way the word has been trivialized.
Well, I think that the outcome is that it becomes trivialized, but the intent is to weaponize. I mean, you see someone, maybe we don't support ourselves, but you see someone spouting a right-wing agenda, and it's. I mean, that's a valid political idea that they hold, and they're entitled to it. But then someone calls them a Nazi or a fascist or a racist, and maybe they're not racist, but what you've done is you've tried to weaponize this word to discredit anything that person says, and as you say, the outcome is that it becomes trivialized. I mean, if you're calling anyone that's right wing a Nazi, what about the real Nazis?
Yeah, Charlottesville.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly dangerous to use,
because then they're normalised. Because then then you can't say they're a Nazi, and it just sounds like someone else is saying.
Absolutely, but the intent was to weaponise, and that's the danger.
On that note, that very, very pensive and maybe slightly dour note, should we wrap up here?
Absolutely. From trying to make your way into the professional music scene right through to Nazis.
Yeah, what a journey we've been on.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Josh.
No problem. Thanks very much, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe to us on iTunes or on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Even tell your friends about the show. Next week, we've got interviews with the guys from Fly By Those Nets and with Harry Baker, the world champion slam poet. So be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss those. Until next time, thanks for listening.